So today we are going to be starting the story On the Way to the Summit by Arjun Vajpai. Now, from the title of the story, it is pretty evident that the story is about how the author climbs to the summit or the peak of a mountain. Now, in the story, the author climbs to the peak of Mount Everest. So, as we all know, Mount Everest is the tallest mountain in the world, and it is the mountain which is the most difficult to climb. So, it is about how the author overcomes these obstacles, challenges, and difficulties and finally reaches his destination. So, what does this story basically tell us? It tells us about a sport called mountaineering, which is concerned with climbing mountains. It also tells us about a mountaineer's life, and it also describes the beauty, the tranquility, and the various characteristics of Mount Everest. Now we are going to learn a little bit about the author himself, Arjun Vajpai. Arjun Vajpai, he climbed the Everest in 2010 at a very young age of 16 years, and he became the third youngest Indian to climb the Everest. This story basically describes how he completed the last part of their entire trek. So now we are going to start with the main text of the story itself. In the distance, not too far away, we could see a ladder of light also moving upwards. It was the flickering light from the head torches of the other climbers. Nobody was talking. We kept climbing, awaiting the first ray of dawn. Now, so the author says that quite nearby him, he could see a ladder of light which was moving upwards. Now, ladder of light, you see, is a metaphor because it compares the light from these head torches as if it were a ladder that was leading their path. And it is also an example of alliteration. What is an alliteration? Alliteration is basically when two words which are near each other or which are next to each other start with the same letter, or more specifically the same consonant. So L and L, that is why it is an example of alliteration. Uh, it was the flickering light from the head torches. Nobody was talking. We kept climbing, awaiting the first ray of dawn. It was desperately cold, and the grounds at parts very icy. The ice axe and the crampons cut deep into the ice. So it was extremely cold and icy, and the ice sacks and the crampons are these tools which are used by mountaineers, and they cut deep into the ice. The ice layer was very thick, and everybody was awaiting for the sun to rise up, and so while waiting in the cold. Uh, so what can we learn from this particular paragraph? We see that there is a certain sense of hardship. So the author describes how nobody is talking, everybody is so tense, and it is desperately cold. Okay. Now I've specified in the notes on the margins that ladder of light is an alliteration and a metaphor, and the ice axe and the crampons are tools used by mountaineers. Okay, now we will move on to the next part of the story. Uh, A cold white moon rose from below. So it was appearing as if they were climbing during the night. So it was appearing as if the moon was rising from in between the mountains. So if these are the mountains, then somewhere here the moon was rising. It was appearing like that, you know. So a cold white moon rose from below. but we hardly glanced at it or even at the bright twinkle of the universe above. Now, in the phrase, the bright twinkle of the universe above, uh, the author uses a literary device called circumlocution. What is circumlocution? Circumlocution is basically when you don't use the ordinary terms for something, but you describe it in a more descriptive, a more detailed, a more roundabout manner. That is circumlocution. So, when he says the bright twinkle of the universe, he actually means that it is the stars, the moonlight, or the light from the head torches that was making the universe shine and bright. The adrenaline keeps your body moving. Now, adrenaline, I'm sure all of you must be knowing from your biology classes, is a hormone, and it is a hormone which is basically produced when you're doing some intense physical activity, or you're very excited or tense or stressed, and it provides a lot of energy because it makes your heart go faster, it makes your heart beat fast. Appa's knowledge, Appa is probably Arjun Vajpai's father here. So he says his father's knowledge and experience. So his father must have also had a certain level of expertise in mountaineering. So Appa's knowledge and experience helped our team avoid the traffic jam and the big line of climbers as we made our way up. So due to his father's expertise and knowledge about that mountain, it helped them to avoid crowds and the big traffic jam, and they could climb away easily. We were ahead of every other team that night. After some time, I looked back and saw the big trail of headlamps behind us. I never thought I could go so slow. I stopped to rest after every 2 steps. So the author has realized that he's actually going very slow, and it is very difficult for him to climb because his body is getting extremely tired and he has to rest almost after every 2 steps. I had to pace my body so that I didn't tire easily and at the same time not let my body cool down. So he had to, maintain such a speed, such a level of fitness that he didn't, get tired very easily. So he could not walk so fast that he would get tired very easily, nor could he walk so slowly that his body would actually freeze. The winds were also terrible, so there were cold winds blowing as well to add to that misery. It seemed someone was pulling me from behind all the time and left me aching all over. So it was as if somebody was holding him, which made his body pain and agony. His entire body was aching. So this particular paragraph describes the various hardships that a mountaineer, the physical challenges that a mountaineer has to go through. So moving on, we kicked our bite and wriggled. We kicked our feet and wriggled our toes repeatedly to beat the frostbite. So frostbite is basically, when you are in extreme cold environment, your feet, your toes, your fingers, they tend to get frozen and they sort of freeze, and like there is a lot of damage done to your tissues. So they what did they do to sort of prevent that from happening? They moved their body, they kicked their feet, they wriggled their toes so that they could beat the frostbite. Soon we were at the balcony. Now balcony is a part of the Mount Everest. It is a section of the Mount Everest, and it is located at a height of 8,443 meters or 27,700 feet. So this is a value. This is, you have to memorize. You have to remember the date of the. You have to remember the height of the balcony because it is important for MCQ based questions, or even it's an important detail to remember for your long answers as well. This is the only place where you can actually sit and rest comfortably. So this is another important point about the balcony, that it is the only place where someone can actually sit and rest after trekking for so long. Daju and I drank some hot water. Daju is obviously one of his companions. Daju and I drank some hot water and rested a bit before we resumed the climb again. So they drank hot water and they rested a bit so that they would not feel that cold and their body would be heated. It was a very steep climb from now on. At many places, we had to move over small rock patches, which was tiring at this altitude. I don't know how my body responded or moved. I saw the big line of climbers following us and didn't want to get stuck in the traffic with so many climbers on the same line. So even though his body was being tired and his climb ahead was extremely difficult, extremely steep with all these rock patches which was difficult to, sort of overcome, he still moved on because he did not want to get stuck in the traffic jam and he did not want to fail in climbing the mountain. Then I realized I was becoming weaker and weaker with every step I took. The same thing had happened as before. My mask had frozen up again. At least I had learned from seeing the Jew clear up my mask the last time, and despite my growing exhaustion, I took out my mask and blew through it and then moved on. So he was feeling suddenly very weak. Why? Because his oxygen mask had frozen up. So mountaineers at that high altitude have to carry oxygen masks because it is very difficult to breathe at that great height. So he basically took out his mask and blew through it, so it cleared the whatever section of it has frozen. It cleared, and he wore it again and moved on. So this basically describes the challenges that the narrator has experienced while trying to climb the Everest. Moving on. In these difficult conditions, you have to start playing games with your mind. You have to start playing games with your mind. So you have to trick your mind into believing that yes, you can do it, even though you're in extreme pain and it feels impossible. The, so you have to basically be mentally prepared to go on such a hard and difficult and demanding expedition. uh, the Everest not only tests your physical fitness but also how tough you are mentally. So, just being physically strong or physically fit enough to climb the Everest is not enough. You have to have a certain sense of mental preparation, emotional fitness, mental strength that this motivation, a sense of motivation within you to be able to keep on going and keep on climbing the mountain. After walking for more than 5 hours, the pain and the exhaustion can be unbearable. Taking the next step seems nearly impossible. So, he has already walked for more than 5 hours and it is unbearable. Like the amount of pain and tiredness he's experiencing, that is just extremely painful, extremely unbearable. Taking the next step seems nearly impossible. So like he's like, I cannot take the next step. It seems impossible. So you carry on by giving your mind short-term goals, such as, will I be able to take the next 3 steps? Or okay, here we go, 1, 2, 3 steps more. Yes, I did it. So these are the games that he was talking about. You have to egg yourself on constantly like this. Egg yourself on means to encourage yourself. It's an idiom, actually, proverb, which means that you have to encourage yourself constantly. So you have to play these games where you see, like, okay, yes, let me set myself a short goal. So yes, 1, 2, 3 steps, I took 3 steps. Wow. So you have to encourage yourself like this. You have to motivate yourself like this. Every word I spoke to myself fueled me to take one more step, and this way I advanced one step at a time. So he motivated himself, he encouraged himself, to go on climbing the mountain. At around 5:40 a.m., we reached the south summit. This is again an important time for both MCQ and long question. When did we reach the south summit? Very important. So on reaching there, I bent down to take a deep breath. When I looked up again, the whole universe stretched out before me. Now you see, he mentions bending down here. This act of bending down is symbolic, is signifying surrendering to Mother Nature. So, he's bending down to not only take a deep breath but also metaphorically sort of submit himself to the vastness of nature that he can see from there, to the entire invincibility, to the entire greatness of nature, to the vastness of nature that he can see from up there. When I looked up again, the whole universe stretched out before me, so it was as if he could see the entire world, the entire universe in front of him. I could see the Milky Way scattered all over the sky. We were at such a great height that all the clouds were below me, and I could see stars of every color. I saw a shooting star also, and then I realized that it was a rain of shooting stars. I saw so many of them in a short period of time that I ran out of wishes too soon. So he was this is a description of the view that he saw from the south summit, and we can only imagine how beautiful it must have been to see all those stars, all those shooting stars, and to see the clouds below you. What a magnificent view it must have been. So I began to enjoy the view and the possibility of his success. And the view is a symbol of his achievements, his success, his bravery, and his willpower. So several hundred feet below the south summit, there is a series of rock steps that often forces climbers to the east and into waist-deep snow. This can often be the most strenuous and the most dangerous section of the climb because the wind-deposited snow can be avalanche-prone. So now he has to move on to climbing the next section, which is basically a series of rock steps, and it is a very difficult place to climb because there is a lot of snow there, and there are all these landslides in the slope which makes the terrain more rugged and therefore difficult to climb. But the view had once again re-energized me. So the view from the south summit, that beautiful, wonderful view, had re-energized him, had refreshed him, had made him enthusiastic about climbing the mountain again. On seeing the summit not far away, I started climbing towards it. I still remember the next few minutes. It was like I was nearly there but still not reaching it. So it was as if his success was nearly there, so his success was not far away. From the south summit, we climbed to the Cornice Traverse, or the Knife Ridge, a horizontal face of snow and rock. So it's just a face of snow and rock, and it's absolutely steep and rough and very difficult to climb. I gasped on seeing it. It is steep and looks truly nasty. The ridge towers almost freely over Nepal and Tibet. It's sharp and very steep, so the characteristics of the ridge, very important. Sharp, very steep, and towers almost freely over Nepal and Tibet. Hillary Step is in the middle somewhere, a rock climb in the sky. I stepped onto the ridge via a small, half-open tunnel from the south summit and had to climb with my crampons at a sharp angle. If there is a lot of snow, it can give way and you slip for a scary second. So it is a very dangerous place to, trek. This is not a place to climb without fixing ropes. Climbers must clip in carefully and focus off each step and keep it at an altitude of 8,790 meters and stretches over. So the Hillary step is at an altitude of 8,790 meters. This height you also have to remember, and stretches over 40 feet and is very difficult to cross. Now, because of global warming and other environmental issues, the entire Hillary step, which once used to be covered with snow, is totally exposed. All the snow on it has melted, making it harder for climbers to traverse it. My instructors at NIM had warned me of this moment. So, the Hillary Step, which is also a part of the Mount Everest, was earlier completely covered with snow. But now, because of global warming, because the temperature of the earth has risen, so that's why the snow is also melting from the Hillary Step, and it is now totally exposed. Now, his instructors at NIM is the Nehru Institute of Mountaineering in Uttarakhand, had warned Arjun Vajpai of this moment, and this is the advice that they gave to him. They had told me that the Hillary Step, asked a lot of any climbers. So even the most expert of climbers found it hard to climb the Hillary step, but it was very important to make it through the step. Reaching the Hillary step means you are very close to your destination. Make your mind strong and keep walking. I remembered this piece of advice and it helped me get over the Hillary step. The step is climbed with fixed ropes so that only one climber can ascend or descend at a time. It is named after Sir Edmund Hillary. Sir Edmund Hillary is this mountaineer from New Zealand who scaled the Everest for the first time on 29th May 1953 along with a Nepalese Sherpa. So it is named after him, and the Hillary step would not be difficult at sea level for experienced climbers, but at Everest altitude, it is considered the most technically challenging aspect of the climb. While today's climbers use a fixed rope up here to ascend the step, Hillary and Tenzing had climbed this impressive obstacle without fixed ropes and using ice climbing equipment that is primitive by today's standards. Now, this phrase, impressive obstacle, is an oxymoron. Impressive obstacle is an oxymoron. Oxymoron is a literary device in which two contradictory terms or two opposites, two polar opposite words are placed next to each other. So an obstacle, which is a difficulty, how can it be impressive, right? So that's why it's an oxymoron. Now what does this oxymoron mean? It means that even though this actually, this obstacle is impressive because the climber who can climb it has experienced everything that he possibly needs to know. It is the most challenging aspect of the climb, and if he has climbed this particular obstacle, then he can do anything. He or she can climb any mountain that they desire without fixed ropes and using ice climbing equipment that is primitive by today's standards. From the Hillary step, climbers must trek the final feet to reach the summit. I could see the summit now just in front of me. I had to go down a bit and then a small climb to reach the real summit. Every step I took towards it brought fresh tears to my eyes. The dream I had been living with for the past 6 years was finally going to come true in a few moments. I didn't know what I would do once I reached the summit, but I was so happy. After the Hillary step, one sees strange white wave formations of frozen snow pointing out from the summit. We kept climbing towards them. This section is usually not roped, but it isn't too steep. Near the top are survey and scientific equipment, prayer flags, discarded oxygen bottles, and a few other small items and mementos left by climbers. Then we reach another white edge, but this time it doesn't stretch too far. Instead, it slopes downwards. We are peeking down at the north side of Everest, so we had finally reached. I finally reached the summit. This date is also very, very, very important. It is absolutely going to come in the examination. 6:18 a.m. on 22nd May 2010. A day I shall never forget. My dream had come true. I was crying like a baby and also laughing. So his dream of climbing the Everest had finally come true. Now this sentence, I was crying like a baby and also laughing, is an example of the literary device called antithesis. What is antithesis? It means a sentence or a particular paragraph which has these contradictory or opposite ideas. So this sentence has both the words crying as well as laughing. So those both are like polar opposites. So in the same sentence, it is being used for the same person. That is why antithesis. Now this a particular page is perhaps the most important of them all. Climbing the Everest is not only merely about a dream, but also acting on it. Everest is our highest mountain, and the climb has an everlasting, profound impact on most Everest climbers' life. So, so climbing the Everest, that is a dream that many people have, but not many people are able to act on it or able to actually go to Nepal and climb the mountain. But those who are lucky enough, the mountaineers who are actually lucky enough to be able to climb the mountain and fulfill their dream, have this everlasting and profound impact on them. Everlasting means something which lasts forever, and profound means something which is deep. So it impacts them deeply. The Everest is a graceful, gentle mountain. Even though it occasionally keeps some of us forever when some climbers fail to make it back, in return it offers the lucky rest, a tremendous insight into ourselves as we climbers are tried in very hard situations. So, so the Everest is actually a graceful and gentle mountain because it teaches us so many things, and it has such a great impact on the mountaineer's life. And even though some of the mountaineers are not able to return from uh, the Everest, because of course not many people survive that difficult and painful climb, but the lucky rest who do come back have learned about not only nature, the mountains, but also about themselves. Because they are tested in every possible way, so it increases their willpower, their motivation, their bravery, all those qualities. The Everest also reveals the soul of nature, the true soul of nature, and all its beauty, temper, and might. So the Everest is actually a symbol for Mother Nature. So it reveals the very soul of nature, and the beauty of nature, the temper of nature, the mind of nature. The Finally, the Everest. So there's a printing mistake here. The T is not there. However, just note that the T is to be mentioned. So yeah, Everest shows you the grace of great dreams. Now, what does this phrase mean? Grace of great dreams. Grace of great dreams basically means that the Everest is a source of inspiration, is a source of dreaming for many people, and it actually shows you how you can actually achieve your dreams, your goals, and the kind of motivation, the kind of willpower and focus you need to do that, and how you have to overcome your fears and concentrate on your goal and your goal only, and triumph will follow. Reaching the summit is not only merely an achievement, but an experience to be savored, to be relived, and cherished, and it has become an inspiration for all that I will do next. So, climbing the Everest has inspired Arjun Vajpai like nothing ever has. He is truly motivated by his experience during climbing the Mount Everest. The mountains may look remote and unshakable, but I returned aware of their fragility. So, mountains, even though they might appear to be, so even though the mountains may look very strong and invincible, they are actually very fragile and weak. So, we live in a symbiotic relationship with nature. Symbiotic means when symbiotic is basically a relationship where both the uh, members of the relationship are interdependent on each other. So if one is changed, the other will also be influenced. So nature can't survive without the mankind, and mankind cannot survive without nature. So we live in a symbiotic relationship with nature, and the more we take care of it and respect it, the more secure our lives are and those of future generations. The effects of global warming can still be stemmed. We need to be responsible, caring, and concerned citizens of the earth. Looking down from the Everest summit, I felt as though the earth belonged to me and I belonged to it, and was part of it. It's an overwhelming feeling. So he felt very overwhelmed, looking down at the world from the tallest mountain in the world. And he says that we are as much a part of nature as nature is a part of us, so it is our responsibility to be more concerned, to be more caring, to be more responsible towards Mother Nature, and be more responsible citizens of the earth. And at the last line, he says, looking down from the Everest summit, I felt as though the earth belonged to me. So he felt as though he was an integral part of the world. And he felt like he belonged to the world and the world belonged to him and was part of it. And at the very last two words, it's an overwhelming feeling. So this overwhelming feeling is actually the inspiration, the motivation, and the enthusiasm he has for fulfilling his dreams. So, if we, so what is the story basically teaching us? That it doesn't have to be necessarily climbing a mountain. Whatever dreams we might have, if we are focused, if we are concentrated, if we have enough willpower, that we too can have that overwhelming feeling of finally achieving our dreams. Now, finally, before going to the themes and the allegory of the story, one concept which is extremely imperative to understand is eco-criticism. Now, what is eco-criticism? Eco-criticism is when somebody writes a book or reads a book and tries to understand how that story or how that poem kinds of represents how nature is connected to human life. So any sort of literature which tells us the relationship between humanity and the natural world is an eco-critical story, and thus it is important to understand the origins of eco-criticism in the sense of to understand it. So, so thus this story is an eco-critical story which tells us about the relationship between humans and mankind. It is a symbiotic relationship. Okay. So moving on to the themes of the story. Uh, the themes of the story are actually pretty simple, and so the number one theme, that is actually the main theme of the story, is the preparations that we need to take up in life to overcome hardships. So how Arjun Vajpai is trained, he motivates himself to overcome the hardships and finally achieve his goal. That is how we need to prepare in life to be able to, truly understand and achieve our dreams. Number two is the sense of adventure in mountaineering. Number three is courage. Arjun Vajpai is an extremely brave and fearless mountaineer who can do anything to achieve his goal. Number four is perseverance. To keep on doing something and to keep on fixating on something until you achieve success, and that is what perseverance is. So the story also teaching us that. Then true living. The story is teaching us that it is not, you know, even worth living if you don't have a dream or a goal. We should constantly strive for greatness until we achieve it. Then the learning. The learning, as I said, is that we can achieve anything with willpower and focus. So, with that note, this video on analyzing and explaining on the way to the summit by Arjun Vajpai comes to an end. So, kindly let me know if you have any doubts in the comment section. Bye. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe.